I have recently, past maybe 3 months, really made more of an effort to count my calories. As I've gotten older, I've found that if I don't eat well, uh, it just changes how I feel, and being lighter on my feet is really nice. Um, so I've kind of decided to, eat a little better. But when you cut calories, it gets hard, and it's really some days a struggle to keep it under. Now, you know, I could go to the Bible to find answers to questions that I might have. I've seen people do this a lot. There was a woman. One time I went into the break room at work, and she was reading her Bible, and you just never saw that. Maybe because people have it on their phone, I don't know, but she just had her Bible open, and I said, "Oh, I said, never see people read their Bible," and she looked up and kind of had a look on her face like she wasn't playing games, and she was like, "Well, I'm looking for passages. I'm trying to figure out why people cheat on each other." I said, "Oh, are you married?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I was like, I thought her husband had cheated on her. And through the course of the conversation, turns out she was thinking about cheating on her husband. She was very tempted. I was like, "Oh." And that was a really tough thing to shift gears, to, oh, completely different thing to think about here. And after that, she never talked to me again. I wonder if she thought I was being judgmental or something. Maybe I gave her a bad impression. But that's always stuck with me because there's plenty of examples in my life where I've seen it in myself and in other people where you go to the Bible to fix a particular problem. And the truth is, the Bible doesn't always directly speak to a particular problem. If I wanted to fix something about, something that's I'm thinking a lot about right now, like my calorie count, um, I might be able to go to passages about fasting or something like that. But I'm not going to get specific advice on this, right? Or on even on the morality of it or anything like that. I'd have to do a lot of research to make it all work together and turn it, and then I'd have to decide whether this is going to be about health or about the Bible. Kind of interesting to think about. I apologize if this is kind of all over the place, but the reason why I'm going here with this is that I've decided what I'm going to do instead is of I have a lot of specific issues I'd love to go to the Bible to get answers for. But I'm more recently, and a lot of people do this, and there's a lot of different names for it. Okay, I'm not advocating for something that's all that advanced or different. Okay, I think it's something that Christians have done for a very long time. And what I'm doing right now is I'm enjoying Colossians, I'm enjoying Romans, I'm enjoying, Deuteronomy. But you've noticed I've done a couple things about Mark. I've talked a bit about Mark. At some point, I decided that I was going to go into the Gospels again because it's been so long. I love doctrine. I love to investigate doctrine and think about it. And I decided I'm going to go back to the Gospels and sketch out a biography of Jesus. Now, the biography's there, right? It's been preached to me many times. I've thought about Jesus many times, right? I mean, you have too, most likely, if you're watching this. But I don't know that I've ever deliberately sat down and said, no, 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 no. I want to know who was this man. Not that I'm having doubts or anything like that. Just I want to know him better. And so I'm going to take you through just a little bit of that process. I hope this isn't too long, but this is going to be Mark 5. Let's get the zany professor in there. Now, I'm jealous of the zany professor because he's not counting his calories. So he gets to eat whatever he wants. So that's pretty nice. I have to say, if I can ever get back to that place, but I just don't think I ever can. But he can eat whatever he wants. Must be nice. Okay. So Jesus has just taught. He just taught about the kingdom of heaven. Okay, he's just talked about. He's discussing it in terms of the harvest, right? Like this is the methodology God's going to use to create His kingdom. All right, there's going to be the gospel is going to go out, and it's going to be like planting a seed, and then God's going to reap a harvest. Okay, and He'll send workers out to do all of that process. Okay, you'll see workers go out and do that. But then it gets to a really interesting passage. It says, they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. Singular, by the way. An unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains. But he wrenched the chain apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mounts, he was always crying out and bruising himself with stones. Think about that for a minute, that kind of bizarre isolation. God does seem to reach out to people who are isolated. In people who are in the wilderness, right? But what I mean here is by bizarre isolation, is I was thinking of his name, Ted Bundy. And Ted Bundy, not to get too graphic, suffered from necrophilia. And he would go out into the woods where there were dead bodies that he had buried to spend time there. And it's just such a dark image, of just someone spending time with corpses. And here's this guy, I'm not accusing him of necrophilia, I'm just saying this obsession with death and being around these kind of in isolation in this because he's been rejected, But anyway, the point here is that that's kind of what struck me when I first read this. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me. For he was saying to him, Jesus was saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. And notice, by the way, it wasn't like this immediate exorcism, okay? This was not immediate. This was an effort. And we see this, the Bible does tell us that it takes great effort to perform an exorcism. So even for Jesus here, it takes great effort. And Jesus asked him, what is your name? He replied, my name is Legion, for we are many. So now we get into multitude, right? So you have the singular, a spirit. So I wonder now, this is speculation, but I wonder if this man had been known to be possessed by a spirit, but was in fact possessed by multiple spirits. Does that make any sense? It's sort of like there's a way in which someone's perceived, and then there's the reality. So this man was perceived to be possessed by an unclean spirit, but the reality was he was possessed by many unclean spirits. Okay. That's an interesting quirk in the language there if you read it closely. And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us the pigs, let us enter them. Send us to the pigs, rather, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirit came out and entered the pigs and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushing down the steep bank into the sea, and were drowned in the sea. Now, I have a lot I want to say about that, but I want to read this part real fast. It says, "The herdsmen fled and told in the city and in the country, and people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid." That I really wanted you to see, because they were clearly afraid of this man, but they were afraid of his power too. The power he had clearly had, and now seeing him in his right mind, they were even more terrified. Now we're getting a clearer picture than they were getting, okay? We're getting a much clearer picture. We're seeing it wasn't one spirit, it was multiple spirits. We're seeing, we understand that this is the power of God. We understand that there's kingdom building going on and all of these things. They don't get that. They don't get any of that. And Jesus, by the way, now think about this, comes on the heels of kingdom building, right? The man wants to go with Jesus. And what does Jesus tell him? Let's go down and look. This is a little bit further down in 19. He says, "And he did not permit him, but said to him, 'Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you.' And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled." So when they heard the story, they marveled. And perhaps, well, for certainly those people knew who this was, right? So when they hear it secondhand, they're not as terrified, even though they're seeing the results of this. So maybe that's just speculation, and this is important that I go through this way. So I know this is a long video, and I apologize. But the people that were closest, who had probably experienced this man, were scared of what they saw. But the people further away marveled. All the events didn't take place in front of them. Now, back to my point about going to the Bible for a little something. Remember, I was talking about going to the Bible for specific encouragement would not tell someone not to do that. But sometimes what you end up with is a little bit of, you have to decide whether you want to learn from the Bible or bring something to the Bible. You know what I mean? Which really ultimately we have to go to God when we have areas of ambiguity and trust that he's going to fix some of these things. It's not that I'm not saying you shouldn't go to the Bible. I believe everything you need is there. But all I'm saying is when it comes to specific things and areas of ambiguity, we really need guidance from God, okay? And sometimes we have to have faith that he's going to do that. So I'm coming here, as I was saying earlier, for a biographical sketch. I want to know who Jesus is and reflect on that about things about myself, okay? And what I'm seeing here is he goes into this very dark place that I wouldn't want to go to and fights evil, does something that actually takes a struggle from what I can tell in the text. And I'm seeing later on, I don't have time to read all the context, or it might have been before, I apologize. He calms a storm. He was asleep in the boat, right? Probably before, actually, this. And he calms a storm, and he questions their faith. And so I'm seeing two forms of courage here. But is it just courage? That's an anthropomorphism, isn't it? If you really read the text. It's not just courage. It's a pure understanding of the Father. It's a pure understanding of the Father. So pure, it informs how he sees the world. Now, you may, and I rightfully might be tempted to go, well, he's the Son of God. He's going to see God work, right? He's going to see the Father work. I think that we need to be careful with that kind of thinking. I think that we have to have the kind of faith Jesus is instructing us to have, just like his faith. I said earlier that when I went through the Psalms, the thing I walked away from was that I see the work that God needs to do in me, because I don't love God's glory the way the psalmists or Jesus or Moses or these big biblical figures, these people of history, I've never wanted God's glory the way they do, ever, to be totally honest. And the people that are seeking that are seeing God do incredible things and have the kind of faith Jesus was instructing his disciples to have. By the way, they were struggling too in these areas. Okay, point here is this, and I don't want to ramble. When I see that it's not just courage, because I may see that I lack courage for sure, and there's areas where I want more courage. But I also realize that I don't have that purity of understanding God, that faith that God is doing this work. And since God is doing this work and I'm seeking after his will, and I'll be doing this work as well, why should I not believe that all these things would be added to me? And yet we see over and over in the scriptures, big figures like Moses. One of the first videos I did was his doubts about God, despite seeing all the things God has done. Now, that was a pre-Pentecostal situation and all that. I don't want to get into all that. But my point here is that I hope that I'm going to keep you updated on this biographical sketch I'm outlining. Is it just a quiet time? Probably. It's a really I'm maybe putting a shinier veneer on what is really just a glorified quiet time. Okay, but I thought you might be interested in where this journey leads.